Hello, this is Wehavecookies 56, and this is the 6th tutorial in my Forge modding tutorial series, and this time we're going to be doing possibly the most important and most useful thing that Forge offers, which are events. Now, events are pretty simple to understand. Basically, they are triggered when certain things happen. So, for example, when a mob gets hit by something, there's an event that gets triggered, and we can do stuff when these events are triggered. So, we don't need a lot of code here, really, to actually get them to work. We're just going to go into our main mod file here, and we can actually put them in the, we can register it in the post in it, but we haven't got a class yet, so, but I will, they're ready. So, we don't really have anywhere to put the events. I think I'm just going to put them in the main, main package, and I'm going to call it tutorial mod event handler. So we're going to have an event handler, and this is where all our events are going to go. I'll just leave this empty for the moment being, and then to register it we just do Minecraft forge dot event bus dot register, and then we have our event handler class. So if it's gonna do this, could it come up with it? There we go. And that's all you have to do to register the event handler. Pretty easy. We don't have to do anything else, so that's super nice. If we make another class that has events in it, you need to register it. So if you can put events in pretty much any class you like, as long as you register that class as an event handler. So there are a lot of events, and I'm not going to cover all of them because it would take like hours to cover all of them. So I'm just going to cover some important ones. But there is this list that was made by Vic _, I think, on the Minecraft forums, and it's kind of old now because it was made in before 1.8 came out, so it's in 1.7, and there's some of the information here isn't as useful anymore, such as the event bus here, because you used to have to use 2 different event buses to register them. But now we just use the Minecraft Forge.event bus all the time, so you don't have to worry about this at all. All the rest is still pretty helpful. There are obviously some missing events because there's been some that have been added since 1.7. So, but this does have a lot of the events, and not many have really been removed, so this is still pretty helpful. So I'll link this in the description because it is definitely useful. You can also look through like the source code of Forge to find some of the events. So if we go in here, you'll find that there are quite a lot in here. There's not all of them though. There are some in other places. That's why it's kind of hard to make a list. But there are a lot here. So, yeah, pretty much anything you can think of, there's probably an event for. But anyway, so the way we do events is that, well, first of all, I'll make a method which is going to be called. So the first event we're going to do is make a quick list here. The ones that are pretty useful. So the first one we're going to do is the entity join world event. So I'm just going to call this like entity join world or something. And then the parameters we need here, we only need one. If you put any more, it won't work. So you just put the event that we're doing, so the entity join world event, and then I'll just call that event. And the last thing we need to do is just put subscribe event. That annotation is basically what tells Forge that this is an event, and if you put any more parameters here, it will error, so just make sure it just has the one event parameter, because you can get everything you need from this event. So let's actually look at what we can get. So the entity join world event is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it says here as well in the class if you really need to find out, and it means, you know, just whenever an entity joins the world. Pretty simple. So when you load up the game, like when you load up a save, or if you join a server, that sort of stuff. And we can see that it is cancelable, so some events can be cancelled, and this means that you can kind of change the behavior of something. So let's say we did like the Living Hurt event and we wanted to cancel that event. I'm pretty sure it is cancelable. We could say, instead of hurting the entity, we could do something completely different. So you may want to cancel it. So if you cancel an event, you just need to do set cancelled and then, you know, true or false. But the useful stuff in this is we have, for entity join world, we have the world, we have the entity that's joined, and nothing else, because that's all we really need in this particular event. And there's quite a lot of things we can do here then, because if this is an entity, first of all we could check, so if the entity is a player, because we don't know if it is it's just an entity, it's not entity player, so it might not be a player. Then we can do something, so I'm just gonna say, let's make an entity player variable, so player equals event dot get entity, and we're gonna have to cast that. There we go. Since we got this checked, that won't have a problem casting. So now we can do things with the player, like, you know, when they join, we could add an item stack to the inventory. This will happen every single time, so you may not want to do something like this, but this is just obviously for the sake of the tutorial. Yep, iron shovel, good enough. We'll give them a shovel every single time they join. So of course you can do other things with this, but this is only when they join. So let's do another event. So next event we're going to do is the Living Drops event. So I'm just going to say Living Drops. The name of the method doesn't matter. Call it whatever you like, and it will work. So entity, not entity, Living Drops event. So this is the event that fires when the items are being dropped from an entity, which is probably quite obvious. As you can see, when an entity's death causes dropped items to appear. So what we can do here is pretty cool. So we can actually modify what a mob drops. So we can see that we have get drops. We can even get the looting level if we wanted to change the drops depending on their looting. So that's pretty useful. We have get entity living as well. Still just use get entity. And get source as well, the damage source, so what actually like killed the entity. So if we want to change the drops depending on what killed them, then we can. So that is incredibly useful, and there's a lot of things we can do here. It's very dynamic, it's not one sort of thing that we can do. And we can say, if, let's just say it's instance of entity mob, so these are just all the hostile mobs, excluding like slimes and the bosses. It's pretty much just like creepers, endermen, spiders, skeletons, zombies, all that stuff. And then we can say event dot get drops dot add, because it's a list, and we can add something. So I believe this is a list of, what is this? Is this item stacks or entity item? Oh, okay. Yeah. Entity item, and that's not what I want to do at all, is it? Let's just do item stack. What should we do? I guess we can add one of the items, tutorial item, and why is that not? It is entity items. Right, okay. Let's entity item, and then event dot world object, and then the position, so X, Y, and Z. What's it complaining about? Entity item. Wait, what? Oh, right. Didn't make it an item stack. No, I haven't done dot add. Okay. And whoops. There we go. Okay. So I'll just create a entity item for the drops, and we can actually test this stuff now. There are more events that we'll be doing. I guess what I'll do quickly, so we can debug this. I'm gonna add all the things I'm gonna do in this video. So let's do living hurt event. So whenever the an entity is damaged, we could do like living death, but I won't bother because it's similar to drops, but you know, just handling death rather than dropping the items. Then we want, let's have item pickup, and I think that's, yeah, so that's in a player event. But IntelliJ does it automatically for us when we import this, so that's helpful. And that's obviously when we pick up an item, that event. Like, they all have very self-explanatory names. Yes, that's how you say it. So usually if you want to find, if you don't know the name of an event, you can usually find it quite easily because it will probably be called exactly what you're thinking of. So next we got living update. So this is the this is basically true every tick for the entity. So in this is very you got to be careful with this one, because if you just put a ton of stuff in here that just applies to every single entity, then they're all going to be doing this every tick, and it's probably going to lag a lot. So good thing to do is always make sure, first of all, it's the right entity that you're updating, unless you want to update all of them, and try not to do anything too intensive in there. So next one, so item tooltip event is useful for a couple of things. First of all, you can add tooltips to items that are not in your mod, so like vanilla items. So you could add a tooltip to like a stick or something. And also, you can modify the tooltips more than you can in the add information method in items and blocks. So sometimes you may find that you want to use this instead. Then we got not the break event. So this is when a block is broken. So this is another pretty useful thing. You can change stuff depending, like when a block is broken, any block. So if it's, say, if you break dirt, you could do something. So a lot of these things are very useful for changing things in Minecraft, or adding things to existing things in Minecraft, where you don't want to make a custom block or something. Because making, if you wanted to change something about dirt, making a custom dirt block that then would replace normal dirt is probably going to cause some incompatibilities, and is also a ridiculous way to do that. So these are all the ones I'm going to have here. There are a lot more events, and I definitely recommend looking through some of these. This is very useful because it tells you, first of all, if they're cancelable, and the fields you get. So if we look at one of the ones that we've already done, so living hurt, well, in fact, let's do living drops. So you can see that we have the array list of drops, like we saw in there, the source, the entity living, and the entity looting level. And recently, I don't know if these are still there actually. Are they? Let's look. Oh yeah, is recently hit. Is this? Doesn't look like the other things there though. So you can see that that's one of the things that's outdated about this. They also changed everything to getters and setters, so because before it would just be the variable, but now it's all get. Like we do get drops, used to be just drops. Like here. And of course this also describes what all of the events are, so if you can't quite find the name of an event, but you know what it's going to do, first of all, Control F is super useful. Let's say we want to find something to do with blocks. And we can see, draw block highlight event. And then we got a lot of things here. Then we got harvest check. And it's fired when a player is about to harvest a block. If you were just looking, let's say you were looking for this, but you thought it would be called block something, then that's good way to do it. I hope that a updated list will happen at some point. I may actually make an updated list myself if I can find the time to do it, because this is mostly complete anyway, so it wouldn't be that much. It wouldn't be too hard to make an updated list because there wouldn't be much to do, apart from maybe update some of this stuff, remove the stuff that isn't here anymore, but that's not for the tutorial, and I am on my desktop. Right, let's run the game, and then once we're in the game we'll start messing with this stuff. So once it is run in debug mode, so we can modify stuff, be back. Okay, so let's load up this. I already loaded it up once, so we'll notice that we have 2 iron shovels because I just joined the world, but yeah, so that event worked. We're now getting iron shovels every single time we load the world, and What was the other thing I did? Drops, wasn't it? Yeah. So let's just kill this creeper, which is conveniently here. And there we go. There it is. Our tutorial item, aka Kingdom Key, is right here. It just drops from them, and it should also drop from other stuff. I think we made this sword, so it's better. Yeah, so we're getting many of these Kingdom Keys. And yeah, so both the events worked, as you can see. So of course you're probably not going to do something like this, and well, you can do so many different things with this. You can, you know, check if the if they're recently hit, or more usefully, the source. So you can say like the get the damage type. You even get the entity that hit them. So you can say like if the entity is a player, then do something. Otherwise, don't drop the item. Like make it specifically for them. If you wanted to make items drop when only like a certain mob kills them, like the music disc with the skeleton creeper, which I don't actually know if that's still in Minecraft. I have no idea. I haven't done it in a very long time. But that could be done with something like that, where you check if the damage source is a skeleton and the entity it's killed is a creeper, then drop an item. So you can do something like that. Of course, it's probably not going to be too good if you do it for something that can't really kill things. Then you're probably never going to see it happen. Anyway, so we are in debug mode, so we can actually do some stuff while it's running. The reason I made these before we ran it up is that if you add new methods in debug mode, it doesn't work. Which is a shame. I wish you could do that, but oh well. So, the Living Hurt event. So we can do stuff when they're hit. So we could change the amount of damage that is taken. So, let's say if event dot get source, get entity is instance of entity player. So we're gonna check that the entity that is hitting them is a player, and then we're gonna say if, well, in fact, I'll make a entity. I'll make a player variable just so it's less effort. Don't have to constantly write event dot get source dot get entity, because that's a lot of stuff. And we can just do player. So if player dot let's say get held item in the main hand dot get item equals items dot apple. Yep, apple. So if they're holding an apple and they hurt the entity, then we're going to say event dot set amount to 10. So we're going to say do 10 damage with an apple if it's a player. So let's just Control F9 this, and once it is done, now let's hit something with an apple. Sheep will do. There we go, insta-killed it with an apple. Let me see if we can just destroy the skeletons with this apple. But if we're using something else, it's still like normal damage. We can even change the damage to not do anything if we wanted to. We don't have to change the damage amount, of course. We could just do something like, I don't know, get the entity that's hit and set them on fire. So let's make the flaming apple of death. And now we set everything on fire. So we get our Lovely cooked mutton. And there are no mobs to test on. So let's get... probably not a good idea, is it? Daytime, let's just get creepers. So yeah. The Living Hurt event. We can do all sorts of things. We can do crazy things, we can do not so crazy things. And yeah, it definitely allows for pretty cool things that you can do with various items, or let's say, I don't know, you had some sort of well, I guess you could even say, like, depending on their armor, if you wanted to make a mod where depending on what armor you're wearing, your fists do more damage, you could say, like, if the player isn't holding anything and they've got armor equipped, whatever the armor is, then do more damage or something, you know. There's all sorts of things you could do. And one of the things that I use this event for in Kingdom Keys is to change the damage that the Keyblades do, because we've got a completely different system where instead of using the attack damage, we use the strength value that the player has, and that depends on their level and everything, so, and what their held Keyblade is. So that is the use that I have for that event, but of course there's so many possibilities. So let's do the item pickup. So item pickup is pretty simple as well. Of course, they're all easy. Like, you can get you can get the item that has been picked up. So if you want to actually get the item, you do get entity item because it's an entity item. And we can do stuff depending on the item that is picked up. So let's say, I don't know, the item is picked up. We can get it if it's in water. That would be a bit weird. Let's say if the item is items dot diamond, then can we get... No, we can't. Okay. Yeah, you only have one thing here, the picked up. Oh no, you got the player. Okay, now we got the player. That is useful, because then we can do... we're going to set the player on fire if you pick up a diamond, because setting on fire is fun. And then we're going to say... let's say we... So what we could do here is make a horrible thing. Let's just do... Let's clear the inventory. So this is the most evil thing you can do. Make diamonds just terrible. There we go. We have no items. It didn't set us on fire, I guess, because we're in creative mode. That's probably why. Let's change that. Not game mode 1. There we go. Yep, set on fire. 5 seconds. I believe it's seconds, right? Yeah. That didn't feel like 5 seconds, but okay. So yeah, now we've made diamonds unusable, so that's good. Now let's do the living update. What could we do in living update? There are... I'd say living update can be useful depending on what you got. So like if you want something to constantly happen. If so, yeah, okay. Let's say if... So we got our flaming apple. So let's continue with our flaming apple feature. So if it's a player, first of all, that's updating, and then again gonna make a player variable just because it's easier to do so. Of course, you don't have to, but it's a good idea, especially if you're going to be using the player a lot. And we can say if player dot get held item in main hand. You can also do just get held item and then do enum hand, main hand, or off hand. But hopefully there is both get held item main hand and get held item off hand. So that is pretty helpful. Now, let's say we want to do. We're gonna so there's a lot of fire in this because this is a flaming apple. So if the item again is an apple, then we're gonna set them on fire. So player, let's set fire, and I reckon the time isn't too important because it's going to be doing it every tick as long as we're holding the apple. So let's say, what is going on? Oh, the game's crashed, I think. Did I do something wrong? Probably. Yes, I did. Ah, yes. Okay. So, that is something incredibly important to do that I completely forgot to do. So, that's crashed the game. So, that's fun. Right, so the reason that crashed is basically because I was holding nothing, which means, first of all, the item is null. And you can even see that it's actually telling me that has happened. Yeah, so because get this is null, and null does not have get item as a method, obviously. So therefore it crashed because that won't work. So what I should have done, which I didn't do, is say not equals null. If it is null, then you've got an empty hand. That's the nice thing about it. So, and again, didn't do it here. Luckily I didn't, I think at the time my hotbar was full, so that's why I didn't get the crash. And I'm just going to copy and paste this because it's exactly the same. Yeah, so make sure to do that. And if IntelliJ says there's going to be a null pointer, then probably a good idea to actually do something about it. Another thing that IntelliJ does show is that it says that these are not used. It's because we don't call the method. If we did, which we shouldn't, don't do that, then it wouldn't show this. But yeah, don't worry about it not being used because Forge doesn't directly call it in the typical way, so that's why that doesn't happen. So let's relaunch the game. Okay, now that the game's actually loaded back up, let's see if this works. So first of all, we shouldn't crash because our hand is, yeah, there we go. So we got an empty hand, nothing's happening. We're not. If I go into, we only have a shovel because of our join world thing, and we're not getting set on fire. So that's good. Now let's get an apple, and you can see that we have the fire thing here, and I don't know how consistent this is going to be. I assume it will. Yeah. So our flaming apple. As soon as we take it out, we're not on fire. So. Yeah. So we can do cool effects like that. Make something that you can't hold for very long because you will burn if you hold it. I imagine that would be cool if you had some sort of like thing that's made out of lava or something, or just a flaming weapon that is super powerful but hurts you at the same time. All sorts of things you can do. So you can make some pretty interesting things that aren't just boring plain old items that are just like swords or pickaxes. You can make some special sword or pickaxe, and that's the power of events, really. Like you can turn a mod from being like this boring typical mod to being like a cool mod that people may actually want to use. Of course, we did do some pretty funny things with the replacing of blocks and everything, but you know, a flaming apple. I mean, who wouldn't want a mod that does that? So let's go on to our last two events. I mean, these events are not like the events that you will be using, but I'd say they are some of the most common ones. I've probably forgotten about some other ones that I've used a lot, but these ones in particular, at least, I'd say even just using these you could do quite a lot. So, Tooltip. Tooltip is the least exciting one here, really, because it's just adding to a tooltip. So, got a couple of things here. We've got the item stack, so the item that will have the tooltip, or the item stack that will have the tooltip that you're changing. The entity, always helpful, and player, similar thing. And then the actual tooltip, which is a string list. So the way the tooltip works is basically that it's a list of things. I'm pretty sure I kind of did explain this when we did it in the items, but yeah, so it's a list of things, and the first item in the list is actually the name of the item. So if you were to clear this list, you wouldn't even see the name of the item. So make sure not to do that unless you want to add it. And of course we've got the advanced here, although it's called is show advanced item tooltips. So a little bit more, I mean, that's a lot more complicated than the item method that just has advanced as the variable name, but it's exactly the same thing. And we're gonna say if we want to change the tooltip on a specific item, we can say if event.getItemStack.getItem equals items.item apple, because that's what we're doing. We're doing the apple. We're gonna make it say, so we're gonna do get tooltip.add, and we're gonna say flaming apple. And if we just reload this, there we go, flaming apple. So we have that in the tooltip now for the apple, which is a Minecraft item that we have modified. So that is pretty cool, especially if you have, I don't know, let's say you made like a stat mod that modified stats for things, and you wanted to change like the you wanted to have a tooltip showing like what different weapons would do, then you could add to the tooltip here. So that is can be helpful. Maybe not the most useful event out of all of these, but I thought I'd just do it anyway, just to show that you can add tooltips to existing items. And then the break event. So let's say we want to, well, okay, first of all, let's look at the stuff that we have here. So quite a lot of things here actually. We got the EXP to drop, so we could actually, if we wanted to, do stuff with the XP. We have to set XP to drop, so we can change how much XP a block drops, or like if it doesn't drop anything, make it drop something. The player, as usual, usually have an entity or a player in most events. Not all of them, but the majority. The block pos, so you know the position of the block that is being broken. The world, the state. These are definitely also very useful for this sort of thing. So what are we going to do here? I say if let's say event dot get... No. Yeah, okay, let's get the state. And get the block. If the block equals blocks.dirt, what are we going to do here? We could do something like... I mean, we could set the XP if we wanted to. Might as well. And we could even do... We could make it explode if we wanted to. Although I don't think we want to do that. Let's spawn a new entity. So I'm going to make it drop something. So this is the like manual way to do it essentially. Entity item. So we're going to make a new entity item. We have the world. And just to make this a little bit easier, block pos equals event dot not capital E. Get pos, import that, and then we have the coordinates, and then the item. So we're gonna have the what should we drop? Diamond? Yeah, I think so. So this makes dirt drop item. Yeah, it does. Makes dirt drop diamonds. The evil diamonds that clear your inventory and set you on fire. But it does give you diamonds. Technically, I guess if you what? Oh, that's the new shadow play thing. I'm not even using shadow play. Right. So let's get ourselves. Well, actually, it's in here. I believe if you break it with creative mode, it will not trigger it. So let's go into survival, and that didn't work. Wait a sec. And now I'm on fire. It's not good. I'm gonna die. It's fine. We have a shovel because when you respawn, it also counts as joining the world. I believe also changing dimensions would have the same effect. Did this properly refresh? No. I think that's why. Yeah, there we go. And now we're on fire, and we lost our inventory. And we got XP. I didn't see the diamond. Maybe we just picked... I guess we did, because we still got set on fire. Of course, we could get like a... whoa, it flies up in the air. So, of course, that is one way to do it. This is probably not the best way to add block drops, though, but you could do it like this. We could also do let's say bedrock. That's what we need. Yep. And now, if we break dirt, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? Oh, that's strange. That is odd. Did it? Why am I doing this? This is just ridiculous. Maybe it's because of the order that I did it in. Surely not. I don't know. Probably isn't the best assume if we did event.get state, no, didn't do something wrong, did I? Not entirely sure why that doesn't work. That is rather strange. I wonder why that is not working. Is there a better... I guess we probably want break. Yeah, break speed and break event. Okay. See, yeah, that's probably why it doesn't work. 5 on the block is about to be broken by a player, not like when after it's broken. I think... I don't know if that would... Harvest... The harvest check is basically the same thing apart from like... it checks like... So if you're breaking stone and you're not using a pickaxe, then obviously it would... The harvest check is gonna say that you can't harvest it, or if you have if your pickaxe isn't good enough, same sort of thing. So very similar, but dependent on what you're using, rather than the break event that is just for doesn't matter if you've got the right tool, as long as the block is broken, then it will happen. So, what else could we do here? With the world, you have a lot of options. You can spawn entities, you can set block states, you can create explosions. I mean, you can do all sorts of stuff. Add weather effects, like so many things in the world. Because, you know, it's the world, and there's a lot to do in the world. You can change the world time if you wanted to. So there is the most of the events you can do a lot because they give you like the player or the entity as well as the world. And if you have an entity, then you can get the world. So if it doesn't directly give you the world, you can still get it. So as long as you have an entity, you have a lot of options. And especially if it's if it's like something like Tooltips, and you while there's a lot of things you technically could do, like you wouldn't do stuff like affecting the entity in some way. Like you wouldn't want to set the entity on fire. You can get the entity right in here, yeah. You probably wouldn't want to do something like that when the tooltip is added. That would be very stupid. That wouldn't make much sense. But I mean, you could do it. Not sure why you'd want to, but I guess if you really wanted to. But yeah, this mod is now crazy, and it could be even crazier the more events we add. But I think that's a pretty good like start to events. I think pretty much every mod can make use of events. I think they are maybe the most important thing that you can really like learn about with Forge, because they are so powerful. And once you know how to if you know how to even do a single event, you can do another one, because you literally just need the subscribe event, annotation, and then the event name, the event class as the parameter type, and that's all you need. And of course, to register that event, the event handler. If we put any of this, just to like reiterate, if we put like one of these in, I don't know, in our item, let's say, then we would have to register the item class as another event handler. So just keep that in mind. If your events aren't firing, first of all, make sure they've been registered, because that's obviously important. If they're still not firing, then it's possible that either what you think is that would fire it isn't, or you've made a mistake somewhere. Maybe you've forgotten to put the subscribe event. If you put more than one parameter, then I believe it will crash, so that will be pretty obvious. But if nothing else is working, then, well, something's definitely wrong. Guess the best way to test it really is to not do anything and just print. Just be like, I don't know, print, let's do print line, and then be like, joined world. And then if you see joined world in there, then you know the event is firing. Before you start like checking for things, because you never know, it might not be working properly. So yeah, events, super powerful, super awesome, and my mod, I have them, I use a lot of them, and it's really like the main, like if I didn't have events, then a lot of things in my mod would not work. So I'd say pretty good things to learn about. So that's everything for this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and I think next tutorial I'm going to do more stuff on the blocks. So I think we're going to do rotating blocks that have different textures on different sides of the block, and see, maybe some other things. I'll think of some other stuff, but that's definitely going to be part of the tutorial at least. Anyway, goodbye. If this video helped you, then give it a like, and if you want to see more, subscribe. And if you want to support me, go to patreon.com/Wehavecookies56.